When I went to Moody Bible Institute to get in, I had to sign a doctrinal statement, and in order to graduate, I had to sign the same doctrinal statement, which means that over 4 years, I wasn't supposed to learn, I was supposed to go deeper into the same set of beliefs I came in with.
I'm Mitch.
And I'm Missy.
We're co-workers.
He's the boss, and we're married.
And she's the boss. Together, we host Good Faith Weekly, a podcast on faith and culture.
What could possibly go wrong?
Tune in and find out. Missy. Welcome to Good Faith Weekly. On this episode, Missy and I are going to reminisce about Christmas week. We're really excited about the holidays as they're right around the corner. And then later on the pod, Missy and I sat down with Reverend Brandan Robertson from New York City. His brand new book is Dry Bones and Holy Wars. It is a great conversation that you're going to stick around for. Merry Christmas, Missy.
Merry Christmas.
Oh, folks, it is a sad, sad state here in the Randall house. It is Christmas week, and Mrs. Claus has come down with a cold.
I'm so sick, but we are so excited because of my not being able to speak. We have enlisted the best fill-in guest host we could find in the house.
Absolutely.
That was awake.
Yeah, both of our boys are back in town from their places where they live out in California and New Hampshire, and we've been having a great time with them. But sitting in with us today is none other than our eldest, Cole Randall. Cole, welcome to Good Faith Weekly.
Hi. Hello. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks
Happy
for stepping up.
In.
Yeah, thanks for stepping up. I mean, Mom just came down with the crud, and so appreciate you stepping in and
that's totally
being a pitch hitter today.
Seeing that it is Christmas, you had asked me if I wanted to just set this one out completely since my throat hurts so bad, but we have to exchange our Christmas gifts.
Oh. Well, yours is on the way.
You got the tracking number on that? Can we do some receipts? I need some proof that this exists.
So I do have a gift for you. And for those of you keeping track, I believe this is my third time to show up on the pod with a gift for you.
You're still trying to get the permanent gig.
Zero?
That's what, yeah.
No, I'm trying to not get it. This is my favorite way to do gifts, by the way, is for me to give you something and you not, because I'm a horrible gift receiver.
Well,
that's true, right?
That is true,
okay.
yeah.
Anyways.
Because I'd give you something really great, and it would just kind of like you'd look at it and just
whatever.
sit there.
Anyways, so
I have to find a place for this.
I'll show you where to put it. Okay. I need Cole to video so we can get something for the socials and not get me in it because I'm sitting here with a mask and looking like death.
Yeah, no, totally. You're definitely not going to be in it.
You're definitely
going to be in it.
Yeah, she's definitely giving off the Christmas future
Merry
spirit.
Christmas.
Well, thank you. Wow, this is very patriotic.
Well,
I cannot wait to see what is inside this candy cane.
You're so in the
box.
video. It's so funny.
wow.
Oh my gosh. Oh, it's a box from Amazon. Just what I wanted.
You gotta hurry it up there, buddy. They can't see.
I know. I'm trying. Why did you tape it?
Not TV. but so I could wrap it.
Okay. All right. Breaking through the taped box. Here
A little ASMR for all our listeners.
Oh, it is a Wonder Woman costume.
No, don't say that. That's no, it's a cape.
Is this for you to wear?
No, it's a cape. For those who are regular listeners, as I'm sure you are, just like our son is, right?
Every week, by week?
Yeah, it's called Good Faith Weekly.
Yes, I'm sure you listen.
Yes.
For those of you who are regular listeners, you'll know that a few weeks ago we talked about how Mitch used to dress up as Wonder Woman as a kid. And he had the cape and he used athletic tape, I think, for the cuffs.
I did. Now I don't have to.
Now you don't, because I got you actual
pretend.
Real cuffs.
Oh, and it's got the cord.
And
oh my gosh, the lasso.
Now there is some question as to whether the belt and the headband will fit.
What do you mean?
Well,
Nope.
It's not going to fit.
We'll just set it right here on my lap.
Anywho, so that's, if you didn't
oh,
listen,
and
you'll have
here
to go back
the-
and listen a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
It's Dahlia Lithwick's episode. We talked about
Oh my
female
gosh, I'm
heroes.
so excited. I've got the cuffs. I don't even know if the cuffs are going to work too.
So now you can, well, I think you've got them on upside down. But anyways, we need to move on.
All right,
So-
yeah.
but that
Thank
was
you
fun.
so much. This is great.
So now you can wear that cape instead of the one we usually accuse you of wearing, which is the Captain Obvious.
Captain Obvious cape.
cape.
Yes. So, well, I love it. Thank you so much. And like I said, your gift is on the way.
I'm sure it is.
Well, it is Christmas week, and I appreciate Cole coming on the pod to talk a little bit about our favorite memories of Christmas. And so, Cole, you've spent 26 Christmases with us. We're about to be 26 Christmases with us. So tell us a little bit about some of your favorite memories of Christmas.
I remember one of my favorite Christmases was this one year when we were living in Texas, and I have no idea how old I was, but I do remember I was sick with, I believe, strep.
You had the flu. You and
The
Tanner had the
flu?
flu. Uh-huh.
Alrighty, so we had the flu, and we also had like 15 people in our house. 19 people in our house.
We thought we would spread the flu a little far and wide that year.
Exactly. Yeah.
Spreading the love, as
That's
I like
right.
to think of it. And it was a lot of fun because we were all just kind of crammed in together.
And these 19
the
people
cousins.
just didn't come over for dinner or for gift exchange. They spent the night.
Everyone. Yeah. So let me give a little context. You guys were not sick by the time people got there, but we did have all of my family, extended family, come for the night of Christmas Eve and Christmas morning, and we had babies sleeping in closets and mattresses and pallets. Mitch and I slept underneath the dining room table on the floor.
Yes.
We had as comfortable beds as we could get for everyone. And then we kind of looked at each other when it was time to go to bed and we're like, wait, we forgot about us. So we slept under the dining room table next to my mother's geriatric Shih Tzu that could not breathe and listened to the dog
Snore all night.
But
Yeah.
the funnier part of that story is that was one year where Christmas Day was on a Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And so you had to get up and go to church.
Yes, I did.
The rest of us did not. But no, that was
Sinners.
we were. But that was
We were sleepy.
It was so fun. We had everybody spread out in our game room. It was lots of fun.
It was a good time. I remember that that Christmas we got Star Wars Battlefront 2.
Ooh,
And
yeah.
that was the first one that had space fights in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, me and my uncles and, cousins, we were just, like, switching off playing who got to play and everything. And, like, it was a good Christmas morning.
That was
Awesome. That
fun.
sounds
My
great.
favorite part of that Christmas was that you and Tanner did have the flu, which sounds funny, but the week
Thanks.
leading up to Christmas, as you
It's the gift that always
It is.
keeps
As
giving.
you're preparing to host all of these people and you're fretting about getting your house ready, I decided to repaint the downstairs. I don't know what I was thinking. But
High on paint fumes.
the best gift that I got was that you guys had just enough of a flu to be laying on the couch all week, not getting into things, not needing anything except some food every now and again in videos. So I actually got a ton done, got the whole house painted, and then just in time for everybody to arrive, you guys were back to normal and feeling great. So
Oh, all
it was
works
a
out.
Christmas miracle.
It's a Christmas miracle. So now that you're sick, should the boys and I be painting or doing something productive?
Probably. I'll give you a list.
Just give me a paintbrush. Tell me what to paint.
That's
I'll-
right.
Mitch, what about you? You have a Christmas memory to
Oh my
share?
goodness. I've got lots. I mean, of course, every Christmas with the boys was very special. I remember the first Christmas that Cole was born, the obscene amount of gifts that were bestowed upon him in our little house in Kansas. And it was so cold that day. But that was a great time. But probably remember we were so excited. I think we were going to be going down to Texas from Oklahoma on a Christmas day, and we had a blizzard blow in. And we just got stuck here by ourselves. And we stayed here. We went over and spent some time with some friends so the boys could, play with some of their friends on Christmas Day. But you know what? Believe it or not,
Hang
one of
on,
the most...
time out. I love that you find that a sweet memory because that was so stressful. You've probably forgotten, but Santa didn't get word and delivered all of the gifts to grandparents in Texas. So
Oh, I do remember that.
So that
Santa.
was
Come
very
on,
stressful.
Santa.
Anyways, go ahead.
But probably more recently, and this, I wish it wouldn't have happened, but the COVID Christmas.
Christmas rocked.
When it was just
Not gonna lie,
it was just the
fam.
four of us, and it was quiet. It was a nice, intimate memory for me, just for the four of us, because sometimes Christmas gets so chaotic and crazy, and it's good crazy when you're going and seeing family and friends and spending time with folks and just going here and there. But that year, it was just the four of us, and it just seemed like a little peace on earth. That
All
year.
right. All right. Well, I've teed it up for you twice now, and you still haven't hit on the right story that you were supposed to share. So.
Oh, wait, hold on. I think I might know it because actually, since talking, I think that my favorite Christmas took place in a little town known as Bethlehem. Maybe you've heard of it.
Well, look at you, star of Sunday school.
No kidding.
No,
You
that
get
is not.
a star.
But you know what? We'll add a star to your chart. No,
Yes!
when you were a kid, the story that you always tell about Tyler.
Baseball? Oh,
Tyler.
Dude,
the
come
Tyler.
on.
Oh,
Come on, man.
Oh, yeah. My brother was notorious for waking up at ungodly hours on Christmas morning and waking up the rest of the family, whether he was just being noisy or whether he was in the kitchen clanging around. He wanted to make certain everybody was up to enjoy Christmas morning. Well, this one particular morning, it was dark 30, and I'm talking 4:30 or something like that, when all of a sudden, up from my bed, I rose.
With such a clatter.
With such a clatter.
What was the clatter?
The clatter was the smoke alarm going off and just wailing through the night. It was just, it was terrifying because, it's Christmas. We had candles out. We actually built a fire. It wasn't a gas fireplace. So I was really worried that the house was on fire. So I jump out of bed, throw off the covers and throw open the door. And as I throw open the door, I look down the hallway where my brother's room was. And right between my room and my brother's room, he was standing on a chair with a couple of books to make certain he had the right height. And he had gotten a match and lit a match and was holding it up to the fire alarm. And I said, "Tyler, I cannot believe you're doing this." At which time my parents arrived upstairs.
Because that's what you do in a fire, right? You go upstairs.
Yeah, you go upstairs,
Okay.
exactly right. And they were looking at him on the opposite end of the stairway. I was at my room. We were all just yelling at my brother, and he was grinning from ear to ear. He said, "It's Christmas. It's time to go open presents."
I think the quote is, well, now that we're all up.
Yeah. Well, now that we're all up, let's go open presents.
You're wondering why I've assembled you here.
But yes, that was a memorable Christmas for me growing up in Tulsa.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, guys, for sharing. Thanks, Cole. I know I end up rambling more than I thought I would, so I will punt it to you for the outro for commentary. But
Well, we really do hope that you feel better and get back to bed.
I think that's where I'm heading.
So,
Yeah.
all right. And,
Take some
thanks for the gift.
medicine.
Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Can't wait to show my cape off.
Okay. you do that.
All right. Well, stay tuned because Missy and I sat down with Reverend Brandan Robertson and we talk about his brand new book, Dry Bones and Holy Wars.
Hey listeners, check us out online at goodfaithmedia.org and follow us on social at gfmedia.org. We'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. I'm new here and could really use the feedback, but only if it's glowing. Thanks for listening.
Welcome back to Good Faith Weekly. On this episode, we've got a very special guest with us. Reverend Brandan Robertson is a noted author, activist, and public theologian working at the intersections of spirituality, sexuality, and social renewal. Robertson is most known for his work as the Tik-Tok pastor, creating thousands of TikTok videos on inclusive theology and garnering 200,000 followers and nearly 5 million views. Robertson received his Bachelor's of Arts in Pastoral Ministry and Theology from Moody Bible Institute, his Master's Master's of Theology Studies from Iliff School of Theology and his Master's of Arts in Political Science and Public Administration from Eastern Illinois University. He is currently pursuing a PhD in religion from Drew University and currently resides in the Big Apple, New York City. His most recent book, Dry Bones and Holy Wars, is out in bookstores now. Brandan, welcome to Good Faith Weekly.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Brandan, I want to start by talking about some very important news that came out of the nation's capital last week. President Biden signed the Respect of Marriage Act that codifies same-sex and interracial marriages. You actually ditched us for Papa Joe and went to the White House for the signing. So we postponed this interview a bit, but tell us about that experience and what that signing meant to you.
Totally. It was such a surreal moment for me because just a few years ago, I had the opportunity to stand on the steps of the Supreme Court when the Obergefell marriage equality ruling came down. And that felt like a moment for the LGBT community that perhaps we had finally started making progress in our nation. And perhaps equality was something we would realize finally as a nation. And it was such a euphoric moment, only to see just a few years later, those same protections, that same sense of progress to be rolled back significantly. And so it was honestly being at the White House last week and standing with so many activists and political leaders and community members. It was a bittersweet moment because on one hand, of course, we were so grateful that this important law was being made a federal law that will finally and fully protect LGBT marriages and interfaith marriages. But it was a little sad that we had to be back here doing this all over again. And there was kind of a reminder, President Biden even spoke about it, that the Supreme Court is very far right-wing extremist right now. And there are many folks, political leaders in our country that are actively working to find other ways to roll back protections for transgender folks and LGBT folks in general. And so not to downplay the beauty of the moment, it was so wonderful and frankly sacred to be able to stand at the White House, see it lit up for the second time in history in rainbow colors, and hear Cyndi Lauper sing True Colors as we celebrated this momentous moment. But there was a reminder of how much work we still have left to do to actually change hearts and minds in this country, instead of just focusing on legislation. So.
And it was really exciting to see, Brandan. And of course, the reason that the Respect for Marriage Act was even introduced to the House and Senate and then signed by the president was because of recent rulings from this particular Supreme Court. They have made it clear that precedent is off the table. And so after the decision that solidified same-sex marriage across the country, now it seems to be in jeopardy because of this particular court and their attitudes towards any type of precedent that other courts ruled upon. And so and I think you characterize it very well, because this was a great moment. I mean, you had both chambers of Congress passing this, and in some instances, very bipartisan, which I thought was important, and then the president signing it. But it's almost, we're celebrating, but also understanding that the fight is not over, because a lot of concern right now among our LGBTQ plus friends and advocates is that now their rights are just going to be chipped away at one by one by one. And in many instances, it's going to be state by state by state. So before we talk about your book, and you talk a little bit about this in the book, can you address that particular issue?
Yeah, I mean, and that's precisely, again, the sense that I had even going to dinner last week after the signing with some LGBT activists and Biden administration folks, and just really, again, taking in the beauty of the moment, but being wide-eyed about what we're facing. The fact that our Supreme Court is solidly so right-wing is going to have an impact, not just on LGBT people, but on all sorts of rights and liberties that we've won over the past 50 years. And as you mentioned, individual states that have swung pretty far to the right following the Trump era are actively trying to find ways to do everything from demonizing drag queens to actually taking away protections for LGBT folks, whether that's in housing or jobs, or, I mean, even this most recent Supreme Court case that's being heard right now about yet another business person from Colorado claiming that to have to build a website for an LGBT wedding would be an affront to her religious liberties, and this whole complex question about whether businesses have the same religious liberties as individuals have. I mean, all of this is a cover for deep-seated fear. And I don't want to just say this is homophobia or transphobia. I think that's too easy and too reductionistic. I think what's happening is so many far-right Republican folks are seeing the nation changing, are seeing their power and their privilege being confronted and, in fact, lessening. And so they're doubling down on what they determined to double down on 50 years ago, which is abortion and LGBT people, because these two issues are so visceral for so many people in middle America that don't interact with LGBT folks daily, at least they don't think so, and have been solidly pro-life and only think about abortion as photos of aborted fetuses. Like both of these issues are very visceral, very emotional, and we see the far-right Republicans doubling down on it so that they can play on the fears and emotions of this base and demonize both pro-choice folks and LGBT folks. And I mean, not to take this down a completely harrowing path, but this is what we saw at the Colorado Springs shooting just a few weeks ago. There's a lot of details we don't know, but what is clear is that the rhetoric of political leaders and pundits that is fear-based and fear-mongering and demonizing and stereotyping queer folks and saying that drag queens are out to groom your children, that's leading people to believe that and to take action. And that's going to result in a lot of harm still to come, I fear.
And what's disheartening about that is when that rhetoric is posed by our leaders, there is really no consequences after they deliver those kind of remarks, and we see actions taken by other people based upon those words. And it's just really disheartening. It's frustrating, but it just reminds us we've got a long ways to go, and we still have to remain in the discussion, in the conversation, to continue to shape hearts and minds as we think the inclusive gospel portrays. So, as you talk about in your book.
Yes, your new book takes a hard look at the challenges facing society today. You advise readers the book is not, quote, answers to our society's many ills, but as provocations to new ways of seeing and being the world. Can you talk to us a little bit about that statement? Expand on that a bit?
Yeah. I mean, I think at the heart, that's what the invitation of Jesus is. It's an invitation to see things differently and to learn how to be different in our world. And this whole book it emerged as a series of sermons that I preached while I was pastoring during the Trump era. And I had to go to the Bible every single week and figure out something to say to a congregation of largely LGBT people, largely immigrants. We were right near the border in San Diego. And so a lot of the issues that were coming up in the Trump era were directly impacting my people. And I had to ask, does our scripture say anything about these modern ills? And is there any wisdom and advice that we can glean from scripture in this modern moment? To my surprise, and it truly was a surprise, even after a decade of studying the Bible, I was skeptical that I would be able to find anything that would relate to this modern moment. And yet every week I would find another story that seemed to be written in 2020 or 2021. Stories like the one I heard growing up in Sunday school, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and facing King Nebuchadnezzar, who is this dictator type ruler who's making people bow down to his version of a god under civil penalty if they don't. And that was such a profound story that reflected so much of what so many of us were feeling during the Trump era, and the misuse of religion and forcing this certain version of Christianity on Americans. So all that to say, I was surprised at how often the Bible had wisdom to offer our modern moment, gave us something to think more deeply about than just what we hear on whatever side of the news media we want to listen to, and really challenged us to take our faith seriously and to actually try to do something in our own individual lives that changed our community, made it a little bit more just, a little bit more equal. And so that's what I tried to do in the book, shared those sermons and thoughts that I garnered over all those years. And yeah, I hope it helps people think a little bit more deeply about what we're facing right now.
Absolutely.
And Brandan, in another part of the book, you discuss the importance of deconstructing walls. And I wish we had all the time in the world to talk about a lot of this book, but, they need to go and buy it, right? I mean, the listeners need to go buy it. So we don't want to give everything away. But in that part of deconstructing walls, you write, for many of us, especially those with privilege, we have believed that our deepest divisions were healed. And then you give a litany of those examples of how we thought racism was healed. We thought, LGBTQ rights were here to stay. We thought women's reproductive health was solidified. And now all of a sudden, all of these things are now in danger. And you talked about how we as people of faith are sometimes susceptible to these misleading thoughts. Why do you think that we buy in when we talk about these big cultural shifts and we feel like we're making progress, that sometimes after those moments we think the job is done and we've won the battle, but then we realize real quickly that there's still more fighting to be done?
Yeah. It's it's the biggest realization I've continued to have in the past few years, is that we've, especially on the left, claimed a lot of easy victories. And I don't mean that to diminish the hard work that has gone into changes and laws, but we thought we elected Barack Obama. We had 8 years of really significant seeming policy progress, but the thing we didn't do and we didn't invest in, and I speak to this personally from being very involved in the LGBT political scene over the past decade. It's easy to win some policy victories, frankly. It's easy to have coastal pundits and celebrities and folks join our causes, and it's easy to feel like the whole world has shifted and is now on our side. We've constantly forgotten that there are millions and millions of other people who don't watch the media we watch, don't care what's happening in New York or in San Diego or in and who haven't been provoked to think deeply about these issues and haven't had any evidence to change their minds about the stereotypes and beliefs they have. And so I think far too often we demonize. We just say all those backwater, whatever you want to call them, those people that are so backwards in their beliefs, right, we don't need to worry about them. Actually, the call, I think, of the gospel and true political strategy that works is don't do the easy path. Don't declare victory. Don't just force your perspective on the nation or presume that your perspective has become the belief of the nation. You actually have to go and do the work of empathizing with those who you disagree with. Mm-hmm. You have to do the work of refusing to demonize even those who might demonize you. And only when you start leaning into that really hard call of Jesus to love our neighbor and love our enemy, that's the only way lasting change is solidified. And I think the biggest indictment on America over the past 50 years is that we've just breezed past doing the heart and mind change work in order to win political victories. Political victories are important, but they're not going to stay as long as 75 million people still believe that LGBT people are somehow a threat to their traditional values, or being pro-choice is murdering babies. Like, we've got to do the work to convince and change them. And in order to do that, we can't patronize them, we can't demonize them, and we can't fight fire with fire, which is what I think so many progressives have been doing. And so I think we're learning that now. I think, again, just this LGBT, this marriage stuff that's happening right now was a reminder that there's still so much work to do. And as Christians, especially, we should be leading the way and learning how to empathize with those who we consider our enemies, and showing them a better way.
Well said.
So you also address the complacency and indifferences of many Christians directly. Why do you think many Christians continue to look the other way when injustices are really staring them right in the face? Or should I say staring us? Because I think we all need to look at the mirror on that one.
And this is such a great question, Missy, because when I read this part of the book, the echoes of Dr. King's letter from their Birmingham jail just continued to resound in my mind, because there are so many Christians that might and I hate to characterize anybody this way, but might consider themselves moderates, but tend to be complacent and indifferent about the real struggles that are going on within communities, and therefore urge silence, urge patience, and so you did a great job describing this. So yeah, talk about this a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I think that's precisely correct. And to be clear, like, this has been a big wrestle for me because I consider myself left of center, but I'm not the most progressive person in the room at any time. And I do, just because of the world I've come from, try to empathize with my more conservative folk that surround me. And yet, very quickly, really, it was my own struggle with sexuality, and then very quickly becoming an adult and realizing how threatened I became when I finally embraced my queer identity, that woke me up to the realization that my evangelical faith, which always taught me that the primary focus of our faith should be helping other people believe the right things, to the right church, practice the right rituals, do that kind of stuff. And we didn't have to worry about the rest of this world because ultimately God was going to come and rule the world in the end. That is the theology that I would say a majority of Christians in the country probably entertain and have some version of. It's far easier to look at the world and feel overwhelmed, but then get to say, actually, God's going to take care of it in the end, so we can just breathe and be faithful, and that's all we got to do. I get it, but I think that's a fundamental misreading of the gospel, and as you stated, that kind of reading only can take place in a place of privilege. It's not considering the voices of Black and brown people who are afraid to walk down streets of major cities because they'll be arrested or killed for a perceived crime, or an LGBT person who, again, I'm living in New York City, which is seen as like a liberal bastion, and yet we've had a slew of LGBT hate crimes over the past few weeks, so much so that folks are afraid to go out at night in the gay neighborhood here in New York. I mean, there are real communities that are struggling and fearing for their very existence. Mm-hmm. And so if you aren't adopting Jesus's posture, which was one that went directly into marginalized communities and interacted with those folks and put yourself on the line for them, I don't think you're actually embodying the faith of Jesus. And I think that's the larger message, not just in this book, but that I try to embody these days altogether, is a faith that's just about believing, a faith that's just about the supernatural. I understand the need for that, but that is not true Christian faith. True Christian faith requires action, requires interaction with the least of these, the marginalized, requires that you set aside your complacency and choose to get involved in the fray, in the messiness, in the scary realities so many other communities are facing. Yeah. And that's what I hope I'm calling people towards in this book.
And what you're encouraging folks to do, as you describe in the book, is to not pursue, but to be on the lookout for what you define as inner reformation. And, you know, you talk about Francis of Assisi, you talk about Martin Luther in that chapter, but this seems to be more and more prevalent today, this idea of inner reformation. You cite 7 principles in that chapter. Love to talk about all of them, but we don't have time. But why do you think it is so important for individuals to be open to this idea of inner reformation?
Because I think it's the heart of the gospel. I think my favorite word these days, and in fact, the community that I lead, I named it after this, is metanoia, which is the Greek word that's often translated as repentance. But actually, if you etymologically break it down, means to expand one's mind. And Jesus's initial proclamation of the gospel begins with metanoia. Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Expand your mind, change your perspective, change your point of view, because the kingdom of heaven is emerging. The way I understand that is, if we are going to see God's renewal of the world, which is what the kingdom of heaven is, it starts by changing the way we believe, changing the way we think, changing the way we see the world around us. Mm-hmm. And so much of Christian religion, at least the kind that I came from, was anti-change. I often use the story that when I went to Moody Bible Institute to get in, I had to sign a doctrinal statement. And in order to graduate, I had to sign the same doctrinal statement, which means that over 4 years, I wasn't supposed to learn. I was supposed to go deeper into the same set of beliefs I came in with. That's antithetical, I think, to what Jesus embodied. That's not embracing metanoia. That's not embracing inner transformation. And I think I also talk in a different chapter about doubt being essence of faith, the ability to question and to change and to be skeptical. That's not a sign that there's something wrong with your faith, but actually a sign that your faith is mature and growing and becoming more like I believe Jesus calls us to be. And so inner reformation begins before outer reformation is possible. If we want to change the world, it starts with changing our own heart and mind. And I think, again, that's what Jesus embodies.
I love what you just said. And I want you to kind of expand on that a little bit, Brandan, because, when as Christians, especially those of us who grew up in the evangelical world, the buzzword was conversion. And it seemed as though that idea of conversion was almost taken over, redefined to mean more of, as you just defined, kind of an indoctrination. A conformity, if you will, to a certain set of beliefs, or a deeper belief in what you were told to believe. But when you talk about reformation, transformation, that is not necessarily an indoctrination or trying to turn people to a single viewpoint. It's more about the individual. It's about the community. It's just something different about it, I think. And you talked about it well, so I'll let you, the expert, talk about it.
No. I just think it's almost inconceivable to read the New Testament and walk away with any idea that Jesus, Paul, Peter, anybody thought that the purpose of Jesus's community that he created was for us to believe certain things. Certainly, Paul creates some doctrinal statements, but they're very brief, they're very concise, and all of Paul's writings is about how Christians should live together in community and live in the world. Jesus almost never gives any statement of theology or belief. It's all about, here's what you should do, and then his life is a demonstration of what you should do. Christian faith has always been about communities of action. It's always been about communities of exploration. By being in proximity to those who are different, we get to transform them for sure, but we're also transformed by them. And that shift for me, from the model of needing to save the world, which meant getting everybody to agree with me, to actually being saved by the world, because I believe God is in and through all things and all people, and all truth is God's truth. That fundamental shift in how we posture our faith, I think, changes our own understanding of God, changes our own understanding of the world around us, and leads us towards a more humble, a more justice-oriented, and a more kind way of being that I think reflects Christ.
Well said.
So, Brandan, we're going to switch to something a little bit more fun. We're right here coming up on Christmas in just a few days. So I just want to know, what's on your Christmas list this year?
That's a good question.
All these deep, thoughtful questions you were prepared for. This one you were not.
What do you want under the tree, Brandan? Let's go right to it.
These are the hardest questions. I still haven't told my parents what I want. But,
that's really cruel, Brandan. You can't do that to us parents.
I just need them to send me some money so I can buy more books, because that's my addiction, and I spend so much money on books. So more money for books.
We have a son who's an adult now out in California, and he and Mitch would always tell me, a book is an investment, not a purchase.
Yeah. That should be enshrined somewhere.
I'm sure somebody else said it.
It should be cross-stitch on a pillow or something like that.
Maybe so. Maybe cross-stitch.
Reverend Brandan Robertson, we thank you so much for being a guest here. The new book is Dry Bones and Holy Wars. You can pick it up wherever you pick up your books. It is a great read. You will not be disappointed reading through it. But Brandan, before we let you go, we've got one last question.
Brandan, as you know, our tagline at Good Faith Media is "There's more to tell." So in light of our conversation today and the work that you do, what is your more to tell?
Not to be cliche, but I really do believe that the good news of the good faith that we proclaim, that the kingdom of God is at hand, that there is work happening in the world to transform the world and for the world to get better. I still believe that's happening. And I know that in this moment, so easy to focus on the darkness, focus on all the fear and the anxiety, and there's a lot of it, rightfully so. But I want to encourage people, the message of Advent and Christmas is that in the darkest moment, light comes. And as the prophet wrote, "Behold, those who walk in the land of great darkness have seen a great light." I believe that the arc of the moral universe is bending towards justice, that the Spirit of God is still at work. And so don't lose heart. Let's keep the faith, keep being hopeful that God is at work in the world in and through us, and continue to bend the arc of the universe towards a more beautiful and just world.
Lovely, lovely. For those of you who want to know more about Brandan and his ministry, you can go to brandanrobertson.com and follow him there, as well as across his social media platform. He is the TikTok pastor. Brandan, it's been a joy. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, Cole, thanks again for stepping in for your mother. She's not feeling well. She's actually in the studio with us, so she may chime in. She's going to be like Roz on Frasier, just every now and again say something smart alecky.
Right.
But we've asked you to step in and talk about the interview. You got to listen to our interview with Reverend Robertson this week. I'm going to be really interested to hear your take on this. Growing up as a preacher's kid, church being a part of your life, you know, it was just prominent. It was part of our lives because of my profession. You know, he talked about belief systems, and he talked about how when he grew up, there was this strict indoctrination to the point where he went to Moody Bible College and he had to sign a doctrinal statement. And after he graduated, he had to sign a doctrinal statement. It was all about trying to shape young minds to conform to this ideology. Now, as you grew up in this house and grew up in the churches that we served in, how was that different? I mean, we tried not to force our religion upon you or our belief system upon you, but can you talk a little bit about that? How did you react to that part of the interview?
You know, I've never really felt like there's like some set in stone sort of the Bible word of law, like you must follow these tenets and never change from them kind of thing. I also think that's because, I mean, from a young age, I kind of learned that parts of the Bible are just whack.
Expound?
Yeah,
is there
okay,
one in
because I mean, like
particular
growing
you're
up as a
thinking of?
preacher's kid, like everyone wants to, you know, like try and corrupt the preacher's kid in some way. So like I'd have youth ministers or the older kids who'd be like, "Yeah, you know about this one Bible verse?" I'd be like,
Can't
"No."
tell those on this podcast.
I can dress it up a little bit, but there's one story of like two ladies who go on a tour sort of the homeland, visiting soldiers' barracks and things like that. It goes in depth and it gets crazy. But that, like learning that, I was like, oh, the Bible's so.
Yeah. Did you learn that in Vacation Bible School at the churches we were at?
Are you asking for names right now? I'm not snitching.
Was that on a felt board? How did you learn that lesson?
Yeah, I feel like just kind of like learning that, you know, just makes you realize that the Bible's a product of its time, and more so than anything a historical document. I think it's just like so highly revered. I think Brandan was talking about it as just like, or no, I think this might have been a TikTok that I watched from Brandan, but just like how the Bible's taken as like this, you know, holy word, but really it's like has to be put in the context of like the day and age and everything, and to abide by every teaching in the gospel or whatever is kind of like unrealistic.
Yeah. And, you know, I appreciate Brandan writing about this and talking about this. Again, go follow him on TikTok. He's known as the TikTok pastor. He's just really, really great and does a lot of great lessons and responses to some really bad theology that's out there. But, you know, one of the things that really struck me and I guess really inspired me was this notion of the freedom to allow your thoughts and theology to evolve over time. I've always been really confused by pastors and theologians who say we can glean this particular truth and it's set in stone and it will never change. That seems odd to me because the way we understand God has evolved over time, and our theology has evolved over time, and along with it, our ethics and social justice. And so, for you, how is it important to know that you have the freedom to change your mind or to evolve in your thinking?
I mean, I changed my mind about everything. Like when I say something, I'm only like half believing it, half just like wanting to know how it sounds out loud.
Yeah, sure.
Because Like, you never really know how your beliefs stand up until you talk to someone about it and see them tested and be like, okay, what I said, that made sense. They're like, oh my God, no. What was I thinking? That made so much more sense in my mind. Yeah, I think that just part of it is so hard to like change minds nowadays because we are in such like technological social media echo chambers that like we are only experiencing not only like stuff that reaffirms our own beliefs about things, but like affirms ideas about other people. Because I mean, the only real exposure that I have like to conservative Republican stuff is like the Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lowen Berbert, the crazy. Sorry.
That's right. Your mom does that all the time.
The bat crap crazy.
The apple does not fall from the tree, folks. Fall far from the tree.
But yeah, it's like the only exposure like ideas you have about these different groups or whatever is what you're being fed from the news cycles, media, whatever, communities online. So I think that changing minds, like, it has to evolve in some way, and I'm not sure really what kind of form that takes right now, but I think a lot of it is just like taking a break from social media and like, especially now that Elon Musk owns Twitter.
Well, another point that Brandan makes is the difference between belief and kind of discipleship. And what I mean by that is that a lot of conservative Christianity, and I would even say moderate to progressive Christianity, seems to focus on belief, how you think, what you believe about Jesus, about the Bible, about certain issues. But Brandan seems to push back on that in his book and in a lot of his teachings to remind us it's more about following the example of Jesus. It's being a disciple of Jesus, a follower of Jesus. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that? Because, I mean, the church often talks so much about belief, and I've been guilty of it, talking about the importance of certain beliefs. And I do think that's important. It's not something we should negate or forget, but it's at the emphasis of actually following Jesus. What do you think about the difference between those two?
I don't know, because, like, the idea of belief, I think, has two different meanings here. Mm-hmm. One, the belief in like someone's teachings and the way they live life, breathe air, blah, blah, blah. But then there's also the belief of like, oh, do you think that God had a son, Jesus, and like that story is true? Like just the pure factual, like, did this happen kind of thing? And I don't know, I kind of like interpret it as like, oh, as long as you believe that this story is true and that, that there's a higher deity, Jesus, and that he died and rose and all that, like that's just kind of like the belief there. Right. But then when you get into the lessons, I think that it is where there's like wiggle room, I guess, for lack of a better word, where it's like, oh, you can believe, that you can love your neighbors, but love looks different to people. And that's kind of where it's hard. Like, what does loving someone look like? Do you want to love do you want to love and accept someone for who they are, or do you want to love someone by saving their soul from damnation? Like,
sure. No, I get that.
So I think one of the things I would want to ask, while I still have a little bit of a voice, Cole, is that, for example, I think to you a lot when I think of, like Brandan said, he said, Jesus just says, hey, come follow me. I'm going to show you. I'm going to give you an example of how to live. And I will ask you now, I'll put you on the spot. Exactly how many times did you darken the doors of a church while you were in college?
Oh, like whenever y'all visited.
However, one thing that I know that impacted me, you were in college in Boston, is that every time we were out on the streets in Boston and someone asked you for $1, you gave it to them every time. And I just remember that was kind of impactful for me, that you were just showing generosity, you were showing love of neighbor, and you just something you did. I mean, it wasn't even I don't know. It just seems so natural to you to just, someone needs help, I'm going to help them.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to like show off or anything.
No.
But
I think
there was
it's
that guy
just
on the
like
subway one time that was walking up and down just begging, and nobody was, and you got up from your seat and you're like, somebody give him a 5, and you did. And it was just, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like, if I have the cash on me, like, I'll try and give money to the homeless population. Because, I mean, I don't know, at the end of the day, they're going to use it how they want to use it, whether
Sure.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
It doesn't really matter.
I'm just trying to help a dude. Somebody's asking for money. Like, my friends ask me for money, I'll give them money.
Yeah. Well, I think your mom is absolutely right. I mean, just it's an example of what we have gotten wrong about the Christian faith, that it seems to be more about a set of beliefs or a set of actions that you do, like go to church or tithe or what, and it's less about actually making an impact within the culture and helping those that are in need. And whether those are marginalized people, whether those are immigrants who are migrating across the country. We could talk a lot about that, but that's we'll save that for another pod. But it's about example, and that's one of the things that we've been trying to tout at Good Faith Media. And you may have heard us talk about not too long ago. I declared that I am no longer a Christian, but refer to myself as a Jesus follower.
Hell yeah. Established religion's crazy.
But I think that's what Brandan is trying to get at as well, is, while belief is important and that helps us form our theological construct, how we act in that manner is just as important. And it goes back to what Jesus said, love God, love others as you would love yourself. We cannot separate the ideal of love with the action of love. Those go hand in hand. So, and I think you demonstrate that with your life.
Yeah, I don't know. I just try to, do right by the people that I can do right by. But also, I'm not going to say that if there's people I don't like, I don't get. I'm not going to I'm not going to go my way for people I don't like.
Well,
but again, that's the human in me. That's the human in me.
Yeah.
Like we can't be perfect.
Sure. I mean, Jesus himself said they're brood of vipers in the world. So
yeah,
he said love them. He didn't
All
say
right,
you have to be nice to them.
Let's cut him off before he gets us into any more trouble.
All right. Well, Cole, thank you so much for joining us.
Merry Christmas. And one last question before we go, for all three of us, I guess, can answer. Mitch, favorite Christmas gift ever?
Favorite Christmas gift ever? I think it had to be a baseball glove when I was a kid.
Okay. Cool.
Probably a dog.
Oh,
that was good.
Yeah, Santa did the one thing that Santa's never supposed to do and brought a puppy.
Yeah.
And yours?
A Cabbage Patch doll.
Oh,
I'm
of
a
course.
girl of the 80s, you guys.
Well, we hope you and yours have a very Merry Christmas and that you get to spend lots of family time. And just remember to give somebody a hug this holiday season, because it's not great for everybody. There are people out there who are alone, who this is a difficult time for them. So call on them, check on them, and make certain they know that they are loved. Merry Christmas. You've been listening to Good Faith Weekly, hosted by Mitch and Missy Randall. This weekly podcast from Good Faith Media discusses matters of faith and culture.
Subscribe wherever you get your podcast and give us a like and a glowing review. We produce the podcast out of Norman, Oklahoma. Our music comes from Pond 5.
And we're supported by listeners like you. Learn more about us at goodfaithmedia.org.